Are you a business owner looking for real advice and input? You're in the right place. From concept to launch to growth, funding, and beyond. Welcome to Startup Hustle with your hosts. One once sold a business for $150 million. The other, the author of $1 Million Bedroom. Here are your hosts of Startup Hustle, Matt DeCoursey and Matt Watson.
And we're back. Another episode of Startup Hustle. Matt DeCoursey here with Max Younger, who will be sitting in for Matt Watson today. Before we get started, I want to let you know that today's episode of Startup Hustle is brought to you by Fullscale.io. Today, Max and I will be discussing medical device startups. And what does Max know about that? Well, Max is the CIO and founder of Mobility Designed. Max, is all this true?
Co-founder, yep, for sure.
Co-founder.
Yep.
But you're in on the scene. You definitely know what's going on. So as we get started, you know, obviously the whole medical startup scene, it's got a whole lot of different plays. You have things when it comes to insurance, there's different technology. You have wearable tech and stuff like that. But for those of you listening, if you want to, before I hand the mic over to Max, if you want to go to his website, which is mobilitydesigned.com, you can get a picture-perfect view of some of the things that he's going to tell us about. So, Max, why don't you go ahead and give all of our listeners a bit of a background about yourself and Mobility Design.
Yeah, so my wife and I actually started the company a few years ago, and it's a medical device startup company focused on upright ambulatory space. So our goal is to help people move from A to B in a more natural, less pain way. And we started that with redesigning the crutch. And our first crutch product is out there in the market. It's been there for about a year and a half, I guess, 2 years now. And it's been amazing, exciting, exhausting ride to launch that product. And we're just getting ready to launch our second product, which addresses a different set of challenges for the mobility device space. And that is also a crutch, but it's a transforming crutch, just like your co-host here next to you, your transformer. So
Voltron. He is actually not a transformer.
Oh,
but he's close.
Very close.
So you mentioned the crutch. Every business starts with a problem that they're trying to solve. So what's wrong with the traditional crutch?
I don't know. Have you ever been on crutches before?
Yeah, and I think I know the answer. But
So there's a lot of challenges with existing crutches in the U.S. We're a little behind the times, and we use Civil War era technology. It's the axillary crutch uses your armpit and your hands and wrists to support your weight, and that's really not great. I mean, it puts pressure in your axillary nerve bundle up in your armpit area. It chafes you. You're not supposed to use your armpit as a support mechanism, but people aren't strong enough to do kind of a handstand every other step, right? You sprain your ankle, you break your ankle, or you have a knee surgery, you're not going to be, strong enough to do that, especially as people get older. And so we focused on redesigning the crutch so that you didn't have to use your armpits or your hands and your wrists to support your weight. And this was all kind of inspired by actually my dad. So my dad's an above-the-knee amputee, and in 2008 when that happened, we decided to really kind of solve that problem. And we knew that since he's going to be using crutches for the rest of his life, that the existing solutions, the status quo was not good enough. So we went out there and we did it, and took a lot of people and a lot of time and energy and passion and money to get you there. So right now we've launched that product, like I said earlier, and we're getting ready to launch our second product now.
So I figured that there was probably some exposure to someone having an issue with mobility.
Yep.
And, so with that, Dad was having issues with just the traditional crutch. Like, I think most people are using a crutch sometimes just for a very short amount of time. But your product's meant more so to cater towards someone that might have a longer term need, or is this intended to just be to anybody?
Great question. So this first product is really focused on a more permanent crutch user market, and anybody that's going to be using a crutch for, say, 6-8 weeks or longer, that's an amount of time that you're considering. I'm going to have to go from A to B. I'm going to have to go to work. I'm going to have to go on a trip potentially. I'm going to have to kind of live my life, and I don't want to do that in pain. And we knew that the way that people were solving this problem was probably a result of efficiencies, and it's easier to produce and it's cheaper to produce because they're making millions of these things, and not a focus on what's the problems the users are facing and how to solve those problems in a way that allows them to get from A to B in a better, less painful way. So it's about comfort, right? So our goal is to provide comfort and support and kind of a cool factor for people that have to use crutches.
So what were you doing prior to starting a medical product development firm?
I was designing. So I'm an industrial designer. My wife is also an industrial designer. We've worked for various companies over the years developing innovative new products. Hallmark was a company I used to work for a long time ago, and a company in Kansas City named Dimensional Innovations, which they're, all those people, those companies are great. Loved working with them, doing product development for them. And it's just at some point you kind of want to solve a problem, and you jump in and you do it. My wife left her job first to start the company full time, and that's at a point where we didn't have funding to be able to pay ourselves to be able to have a startup, because you're using your own money, your own resources, and so I had essentially kind of two jobs, working for Hallmark and at nights and weekends for my own company, trying to get those products, that product off the ground. So we had outside consulting firms, engineering firms, people working for us. We had to raise money, pitching, investment firms, have a great, bunch of people backing us and that, believe in us and the product. And that's been what's, kind of key to allowing us to go from just an idea and, the garage 3D printed and welded prototypes to, fully functional, working, tooled, injection molded, and, launched product.
So you mentioned the garage and 3D printing and stuff like that. Is that the legit story of where it started? I mean, were you really doing 3D printing and stuff like that?
Yep,
okay.
Yep. So,
Now, how long ago was that?
That was, I started working on this project probably 2007, 2008.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then it took, you have a long time, because you're not fully paid to be able to devote your time to it. And eventually, when my wife said, I want to start this business, I want to make this thing happen, that was kind of the catalyst that allowed us to really make it and solve it. And so that was back in, I think, 2000. I'm bad with my years, it just kind of blends, but that allowed us to focus on fundraising, to build a business plan. We went back to school at UMKC, doing the entrepreneurial business program there, just to learn, because we're industrial designers, we're not business people in the beginning. We had to learn how to write a business plan, how to deal with all the different aspects of a business versus just a product. So
that's a common challenge. So a lot of people start businesses around something that they're passionate about doing, and then all of a sudden it starts to become a business, and they say, wow, I need to learn how to run a business. What were some of the things that you really needed to get your arms around and figure out, and maybe really quickly?
Well, it takes energy, calories, people, resources, money to be able to start a company, right? And in order to get the funding that we needed, which my wife and I raised essentially $1 million in our first round together.
Congrats.
Thanks. Yeah, that was a big round for us. That allowed us to get the first product off the ground and get our tooling and engineering and our team in place and marketing and all those different aspects of a company. But you wouldn't have been able to do that without a legitimate business plan. And I don't know how many revisions in we were on that. That took a lot of effort. My wife knocked that out of the park. She was great at that, and it really helped us legitimize kind of the business side of what we were trying to do and what the real plan was.
So when you're talking about, when I look at something like this, and I can only imagine there were some challenges with speaking to investors. There are investors that want to put money into software. Some of them might be into services. Some of them are into hardware. This is kind of like hardware, but maybe not.
Right.
I mean, did you run into some people that said things along the lines of, if the crutch hasn't been reinvented up until now, why would we need to do it?
Yeah, I mean, it was more along the lines of what their core competency and focus of their funds were. So you'd pitch people, they're focused strictly on scalability of digital, or whatever their focus was. And for us, it just took some time to find the right people, and on an individual basis, kind of like coffee investors. You meet and you have a few coffees and you talk and you show them your business plan and everything like that, and then you end up building a relationship. And it could be an investor at that level, or it could be an investor as far as a more of a fund type situation, which we have a few different funds involved in our company now, which has been huge for us.
So that first $1 million wasn't just from one source; it was from a collection of them.
It was a collection of people.
It's a lot of it. I'll tell you what, man. That episode 2 of this whole entire podcast series is called "Getting Funded Sucks."
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because it's true. I mean, it's a challenge. I think the thing that that I really heard from there that would be good info to pass along to anybody listening is just really try to find, if there's what you mentioned is certain funds or investors are only interested in investing in certain kind of things.
Right.
If you can figure out a way to just disqualify those people, because they're charter bound.
Yeah,
they have this money that's come in, and they're getting money from other people that are investing into the fund, and with that they have a charter that says this fund invests in this.
Right.
And they can't come off of that, no matter how great your idea or your product or your innovation is. If they're charter bound, forget about it. It's not happening. So
kind of even if their charters do direct them, of course, on their funds, but a lot of times they see it. I mean, when you see our product, it's pretty obvious, and people wonder, like, why hasn't that been invented before? And for us, when we're talking to these investors, a lot of times they'll flip it and say, I can't. I'd love to. Personally, I might be able to do something, but I want to connect you to this person.
Yep.
And that's, or you ask, like, well, if this doesn't work for your fund, who would be a good fit? And that's where the warm leads kind of come in, and it helps, to make the connections that way.
Yeah, and it's gotten a little easier to try to steer towards the segment of investor that you chase. There's just things like Crunchbase and different stuff like that where you can actually run some filters.
Right.
And then, another form of fundraising, I would imagine you found someone along the way, if you cobbled together different sources, you just get to, like, the term angel goes a long way.
Oh, huge.
I mean, there's just people that, like, was there someone that made an investment early that had directly been affected by the challenges and the problems that you're trying to solve? Because those, with what you've invented and brought up here, I would think that there are some people that are like, okay, man, where was this, and what can I do to get in on it?
Yeah, so a number of our investors, just like you, have been on crutches and can relate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like it's a foreign thing to them. And a lot of our investors feel good about understanding exactly what it is they're going to get, and they can directly see the benefit in the solution, versus sometimes it's harder for people to understand an algorithm or a software piece of code that solves some problem for someone in a different way, and they can't relate as easily to it. It's harder to demonstrate, or that's something that people have told us. It's easier for them to just get it.
I think you have a good point there. Investors often shy away from things they don't understand.
Right. Yeah.
And I guess a crutch is fairly straightforward.
As far as medical devices are concerned, it's one of the simplest.
So speaking of medical devices, that screams FDA.
Yeah.
And regulation, or some kind of regulatory stuff. So what have you had to go through in order to make that happen? And what was that process like?
In the beginning, we didn't know. You don't know what you don't know, and you have to kind of dig in and start to find out what you need, and then you meet with people that are experts, or at least know a lot more about the space than you do. And we knew a lot about product development and building a great product for people, but we didn't necessarily know about FDA and those things at that point in time. Now we know a lot more about that, and we had to hire consultants and people to work for us to do kind of the regulatory side of things and get things submitted for FDA, purposes and to get our numbers so you can ship product globally.
So with the FDA and the regulatory stuff, you chose to hire a consulting firm. And I think that was a really, or at least consultants or people that had some background when it came to navigating those tricky waters. I think that's an important lesson that those listening can, take into account. Like, don't try to do everything yourself. I can only imagine if you had to try to learn to navigate the waters of the FDA yourself.
It's exhausting, yeah.
Do you think that when you look back at it, was that a real smart move, or did you at first try to navigate those waters and then realize, maybe I shouldn't?
I mean, for us specifically, like in the U.S., we looked at it a little bit ourselves earlier on, and then, you quickly realize that there's only so much time in the day, and you need to do what you do best to help the business grow as quickly as possible. And it wasn't a lifestyle business at this point. It was we have investors and we have a runway and we have all these other things that we need to get going on. And so for us, hiring consulting people in general for various services that we need are critical. And then when that becomes a reoccurring role, then we can start seeing about transitioning that longer term internally, which we do. But for the most part, we try to rely on consulting firms for a lot of our work. So.
Sure, and like you said, basically it gets real in a hurry.
It does.
It's one thing when you're doing it with your own dough.
Yeah.
And when you start playing with other people's money, as a couple of things can happen as well. Either it's easier to take a chance and not feel as responsible about it. Now me, I feel a different sense of responsibility. I'm like, man, I don't know. I've been able to lose my own money effectively and without a so still here with Max Younger. For those of you listening, we've had a couple of technical issues. I guess we got 186 episodes in and then realized that we might need to learn how to use our own equipment. But anyway, so we were just talking about some of the challenges that came with the FDA landscape and regulatory environments, and your preference to or choice to use consulting firms and how that might have narrowed the window of knowledge that you needed. Now, when you get past that, anytime, and by the way, I'm looking, so this product that you've brought with you today, is this the first version or is this the new one?
Yeah, this is the first one.
Okay.
So, yep.
So that's a combination of metal, plastic, and
there's aluminum in here, stainless steel, nylon, glass fiber plastics, and thermoplastic rubbers. There's actual, like the tips are a vulcanized rubber, right?
All right, and we're back again. For those of you listening, the very first episode of Startup Hustle that has ever gone through any editing process. Congratulations on that, Max.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We went through some equipment failure, and that's actually what I want to talk about. So, anytime you're building a product, so our former Startup Hustle alumnus, Davion Ross of Shot Tracker, is given the so-famous quote of, they call it hardware for a reason, as it's hard. So, your product is made out of plastic, aluminum. It's got all different kinds of stuff in it. Now, I know you have a background as an industrial engineer, but what kind of headaches, heartaches, and problems did you have to get through to get something that really worked?
There's a lot of challenges to go from concept to production-ready design. And we hired a pretty gifted engineer and named Larry Guerra, who used to own GCI here out of Kansas City. And he helped us work through a lot of that translation through from design to engineering. And I create something that looks like it works really well, and then he takes it and was able to make it so that the wall thicknesses are correct for mold flow and all that kind of stuff. Because there's a lot of work that goes into making sure injection molded plastics and extruded aluminums and machined metals and all these things work as they're intended over a mass production product. And it's a little easier when you're making a custom prototype or something that's you're problem solving kind of on the fly to figure out how to make it perfect. Well, a production one has to be done by somebody that isn't you over and over and over and over again.
Sure.
And so we went through a lot of engineering to test things digitally, right? You're building it in the computer, and then you're loading it up with weight in different ways, and testing and seeing how it's going to fail, and strengthening things. And it's quite a exciting, fun process to be involved in. And then when you actually make it, you have to build machines to then go destroy it and try to make sure that it is going to hold up to millions and millions of cycles of people walking, years on end, and to make sure the feet don't slip, and make sure that the tips last a long time, and all that stuff for a nice high-end product like we try to make. So
I used to work in the musical instrument industry, and for Roland, and you talk about building machines to try to break things.
Right.
So they would do that with like a piano keyboard, or like just a keyboard, and they had these things with little plungers on them that were just playing the keys, and it would count out a gazillion keystrokes or however many, and just to make sure that the sensors, the circuits, the key itself didn't break. So I never got too far into how many times they failed on the way up to that, but that's a specific set of challenges. Now, you're much like myself. You are tall.
Yeah.
So did you find? So I always joke around about tall people problems.
There's a lot of them.
They're real. They're real because
finding pants.
Yeah, well, or whatever. But certain things sometimes won't work well, and crutches could be something like that.
Yeah, they're not designed. So generally, crutches have about 3 sizes: a small, medium, large, in the typical aluminum American crutches you think of. And ours are a universal size, so it's 4'11" up to 6'8". So I'm 6'7", and it had to fit me. And then my dad, who we originally started this thing for, he's 6'5", and most crutches don't fit people our size. It stops at about 6'2", 6'3", which is considered, for the crutch world, about 100 percentile person. Well, there's a lot of us that aren't that small, and therefore the crutch doesn't work for them. So we designed something that would for sure work for, that height range, as well as all the way down to about 4'11". So
thank you.
Yeah.
And it's interesting though, because you think about the wide range of people that, you have people that are theoretically, 4'8" to 6'7".
Right.
And these are all potential, people that could use your product. So is this a one size fits all, or do you have different iterations of it?
So this, like for the Japanese market, some of our largest customers are in Japan, and we have to shorten those crutches by about 4 inches. So
some of your largest customers are actually not in Japan, but maybe your largest distributors, right?
Yeah. So volume-wise, that's true. And we do a lot of volume through Japan, and their market is smaller. They just have a smaller frame, smaller build. So we have to change the crutch size for that market, and so we have a 4-inch shorter version for them. And then we do, for different people, specific challenges with walking, we do a 12-inch shorter version, because there's a lot of people like spina bifida, or sometimes like cerebral palsy will keep you from being able to kind of be your natural height. And so you might be 4'2" or 4'6", and so we have a crutch version that works for them. But that's on a smaller scale basis as far as the 12-inch shorter version. Yep.
So from when you developed your original prototype till you actually went to market, or how long did it take to work out all of the issues and make it so? Because if you think about it, a crutch is one of those things that it needs to work,
right? Yep.
Or you're going to create problems that you definitely don't want to create. Now, at the same time, you mentioned, as you held up the product, it has a different kind of foot on it than the traditional crutch.
Right. Our feet, they're designed out of a vulcanized rubber and like a car tire, right? You don't want to trap. You don't want to trap water. So we have little dots, circles on the bottom of our feet that allow for the water to disperse outward. So if you can imagine like a toilet plunger on a wet floor,
right?
Normal crutch tips, which are round, circular, they trap water, right? When you put it on a floor, it slips like on a tile floor. Ours don't. It pushes the water out and allows the traction of the rubber to kind of take hold it also squishes and conforms to the ground kind of as you step. It kind of molds with it. So it's
for those listening, this it's an oval shaped,
like an Oakley shape, yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. It does kind of look like that. And now that you hold it up sideways, it looks like it has two eyeballs on the side. It almost looks like E.T. or something. But clearly a lot more well thought out than the traditional round rubber stopper that you get at the bottom of crutches.
Right.
And that's something that's not a third-party product. That's something you built all the way through, or?
Yeah. That's, all of this on here is 100% custom for our product. And, you couldn't do around a tip like ours on a normal set of crutches because it has a round leg.
I see.
And it would rotate, it would spin. Ours has an oval leg for strength and lightweightness. So the oval is stronger in the long way, and then lighter weight in the shorter distance on the oval, which allows us a couple things. We can key the end, and the foot doesn't rotate, the leg doesn't rotate.
How do you go about testing the slip ability?
We have machines that we've built that test that. So we have, forget how many cycles, it's like 1.5 million cycles. We're testing a new foot right now at the engineers, and it's a pretty exciting foot. And it's, millions of cycles in, you start to see how it wears and how people will use it, and you can test it on different surfaces and friction. You have essentially a force gauge. You can see the friction over time, the force over time, and you can see how much friction it actually gets. And when you test a normal foot versus ours, it's remarkable the difference. So and a lot of it, just the material alone is a big difference. The vulcanized rubber versus the plastic doesn't grip as well.
It's vulcanized rubber. Is that, you said that's like a car tire?
Yeah, like car tires are a combination of different materials, belts and things, but they have a vulcanized rubber tread which wears really well over time, and it also gives you great traction on varying surfaces. Whereas it's very difficult to make a good traction plastic version of that tip. Car tires would be made up of plastic if it was a great friction source, which they're not.
So when you talk about doing 1.5 million test cycles or something like that, and building machines, so did you actually build machines for your own testing, or is that something you farm out?
No, we have testing labs that do work for us too, but that's on a limited basis. But we do have our own machines that we've engineered, that we built, and just cycle test and load test different products. So it gives us the ability to in-house learn really quickly. So we're able to stress test and understand exactly how the product is going to react and work over a very long time.
So you're not only taking on the responsibility of designing a product, you're having to design the machines to test the product.
Yep.
It sounds like a lot of resources that need to go into this, because then you have to maintain those machines, right?
Sure.
Calibrate them.
Yep. We send out.
Pay for them.
The load cells get calibrated. You send those off to a company to validate, or you have to replace them if the cells become uncalibrated. But it's all digital, right? So you see the load being applied, and you can actually see the forces that are happening over time, which is amazing. So the engineers that we work with are pretty gifted, and they are able to steer us down the right path. So I'm not technically an engineer; I'm an industrial designer, and I went to art school, Savannah College of Art and Design, down in Georgia, with my wife, and we studied, how to solve problems for people. We studied how to watch people, see interactions of people in their environment. Understand the context, and then design solutions for that, because that's where you see the real problems. You don't bring people in to a room and say, tell me what's wrong with this product, because they tell you what they think you want to hear, not necessarily what's actually happening. So it's just about contextual observation, and watch people do things. You can find real problems.
So with an industrial designer will then take the feedback or the observations, and you essentially, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to dumb this down too much, but
please.
Making a sketch of sorts, and then the engineer's job is to say, okay, we would need this type of material, we need this kind of shape or arc, we need whatever to make sure that on the 999,999th use of this, it doesn't shatter.
So we take that research, we synthesize it, and develop key nuggets to build around. So like for us, it was not the armpits. We wanted to focus on using the elbows, which is
right.
a much, just like you right now in your chair, you're using your elbows to support some of your weight. It's much more durable. And we take those nuggets and we design solutions around them. And the first solution we came up with is not this one. The 500th solution we came up with is not this one. We had probably closer to 800-900 different designs and ideas on a way to solve this problem. And then once you get something that does work, you build prototypes, you test things, see if your ideas, your hypothesis is real, or if it's going to need to be changed, which it always needs to be changed. But as a designer, I don't. The hard part is being done, like stopping the work. So you always want to change. I mean, I think you've written a few books, right?
Yeah, 3.
And I imagine the words in there could always be a little bit different if you kept editing and changing.
At some point, you just say, you know what, this is it.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have to go to market with something. Yeah. And you don't have the rest of your life to design this product. Otherwise, it's a hobby, right?
Yeah.
And so is this product perfect? No, but it's pretty darn close. We worked really hard to get it there. And, for us, being able to find those problems and create meaningful solutions for people and seeing them when they finally get to use that product, it's a huge huge motivator for us. Being able to see those people that need it and it's solving their problems is great.
So you previously told me that your product is now being offered in 21 different countries.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
And congrats once again.
Thanks.
So it took a while for you guys. One of the things I talk about in one of my books is that if you're an entrepreneur, you want to do something new, you have to understand your path to revenue.
Yeah.
Yours sounds excruciating. I mean, on so many levels, just meaning like, think of all the things that needed to occur. I've heard about design. We have FDA, we have regulatory issues, you've got engineering, you have
production and insurance.
Production, you have insurance,
Sure.
you have testing, and we haven't even gotten to the point where you have to actually try to sell something.
Yeah, well, for us, we started on that sales side. We decided, because Kickstarter was pretty new, to launch a Kickstarter and see what happened.
You take that back in the timeline for a while, because Kickstarter was pretty new.
Yeah.
It was what, 09?
Yeah. So Kickstarter was a while ago, and what we learned is we didn't understand marketing at that point in time. We understood how to make a really cool video and that told the story and told the product in a beautiful way.
But sometimes that's enough on Kickstarter.
Sometimes it's enough. Yeah. And then we were, I think it was like 2015 or something when that happened, and but the Kickstarter didn't even reach its goal, right? And that was a huge challenge for us emotionally to even get over, because we're already in it. We're already, you're asking, well, what do we do now? What does this mean? And shortly thereafter, a few months after that, actually one of our videos, the video that we produced, was edited and edited a little bit, and it took off. It started to go viral, and then over a couple-week period, it got something like 57 million views, which was pretty insane.
Really?
And we didn't have anything to sell at that. We didn't have a website to sell anything. But over a weekend and some friends, we changed the website to be able to take deposits and to be able to reserve a spot on our production line, because people were trying to buy these things all over the world in different languages that we had no idea how to even answer. And so that was a pretty meaningful moment. It was like having your own private Kickstarter, and we sold out of our first production run before we had anything to sell. So that was pretty cool. But that has its own challenges, because now you have all these products you got to deliver, and your timelines are you have something for a user now that you've already promised them, that you now have to get out there. And we have some pretty amazing people that were believing in us early on that bought that first production run on a product that allowed us to kind of have a proof point that this thing is gonna move. So that was exciting.
Do you know what popped off the viral nature of the video?
We've thought a lot about it.
A lot of times it can be something like someone that I don't know.
Influencers.
When Joe Pippins from the Fishing Caddy was in here, he was on. Who's the guy that hosts Family Feud?
Yeah.
God, what's his name? The guy that announced the wrong Miss Universe.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, the guy that currently hosts Family Feud, but he had been on his show, and like that started to develop some heat and some hype.
Sure.
And you mentioned on the reason that your original Kickstarter probably didn't get moving was you actually, people think you're just going to put something on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or any of those things, and because you've built it, they will come, they will find you, but you're in this like sea of other stuff.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Yeah, and you have to be prepared to market your own campaign on those things. And so how do you do that? Well, that's always a whole nother thing, but you said 56 million views.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Was that on YouTube?
No, that was on Facebook. So
Sure.
And then that video had splinter videos, and other people took the videos and edited them, and they were having millions and millions of views. It kind of was this own world of its own. But it gave us a validation point. It gave us that the world thought this was interesting enough to take a look at, to order, to place a deposit on. That was a big deal for us, and it changed how we felt because we weren't sure. You're still moving forward, right? You have this product that you're in tooling for, and you're launching, but the Kickstarter was a challenge emotionally just to get over. But you have a lot of those in startup life. Some things don't work out, and it may not be because the product is a bad idea. Maybe because you didn't understand how to sell the product. Maybe for various other reasons. There's a sea of other things on Kickstarter. It's hard to get seen. And a lot of people don't participate, in the CESs of the world now because they'd rather do their own event. They'd rather do their own hype and build it up because they get to be the focus rather than just like everybody else, right? And it's a challenge. Each company, each format, each product has to figure that out on their own, right?
I would think it would be hard to sell something. So a crutch, you've got some people that are going to need that full time and on a regular, like your dad.
Yep.
So that's easy to perhaps sell something in advance.
Right.
But a crutch is typically a reactive product.
That was the problem that was why Kickstarter didn't work.
Yeah, because you're like, when am I going to need a crutch again?
In 6 months? Yeah.
In 6 months or maybe 9 or who knows, whenever that deliverable comes in. And
people need to plan.
And that's a challenge. I mean, I think a crutch is typically something that, you sprain your ankle or I don't know, you go through some form of trauma and now you need a crutch. So this is, by appearance, I can tell that this is probably more expensive than a traditional wooden crutch.
Yeah.
Which provides a different, so the law of economics will state that every dollar, every percentage point you rise over and above the normal price of something is going to translate to 1% less in sales.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually like pretty much like it's the same thing with discounting.
Yep.
So if you give a 1% discount, you should see a 1% uptick.
Right.
So this, I don't know, how much is a traditional wooden crutch? Like $30 a pair?
You can go to CVS or Walmart and get a $30 crutch. Amazon.
How much is yours?
Compared to those, it's expensive, right? It's $250. Compared to as a mobility device, when you're thinking about it in terms of I want to get from A to B without pain, on a more permanent basis, that's something that people are willing to pay for to be able to get to that.
If you're going to use it for more than 2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so is that the target market?
For this particular product, for our new product, it's a more temporary crutch user, so kind of an acute scenario.
So is that an ancillary? That's like a secondary product. It's like you've got here's one product that's going to be at a higher price point. It's for the full-time or long-term user, and then you're tackling that price point issue with your second product?
Yeah, so we have benefits for on this product when a user is using it, like the cradle, the thing that holds your arm can go up and it's hinged, allowing you to do stuff with your hands, like talk on your phone or adjust, scratch your eye like you just did, right? So that's you touch your face 3,000 times a day. It's important.
Do you really?
Yeah, it's crazy. Count sometime, you'll see.
And hang on, I've got my clicker here. I just clicked one in, yeah.
And so you need to be able to do things on an everyday basis different than you would on an acute care basis. and that might be a benefit that they're not willing to pay for, for a sprained ankle. And so we developed a product that would work for those users. It doesn't have a rotating handle like our handle. You can push a button, it rotates out of the way, to hold your coffee or open a door or, various other things you might want to do. But that's an expensive thing to do, right? So you have to be able to design a product for different users, different markets. And, a lot of times people walk out of a hospital or an emergency room with a pair of crutches, right? And that's a whole different market. That's a whole different way to get to that. It's not even like a purchase path because it's a device that almost feels like it's gifted to you, but it's really paid for through your insurance. And that's about $110 to $150 you're going to be paying for that.
Yeah, that was the next question are all levels of your product covered by most insurance?
Private does cover quite a bit of it, private insurances, and then public insurance doesn't yet.
Okay. And is that because of the cost?
The cost to get that covered is immense, and it's not a path we've gone down at the moment.
You say the cost to get that covered. Do you have to go through a separate approval process to be like what is that, Medicaid or whatever?
Yeah,
it is?
like Medicare, Medicaid, to get them in their systems.
Oh, so you have to go through a whole separate approval process?
It's a different process entirely.
Is that similar to like the what do you call it? Like the requisition system or what? I mean, God, I can only imagine. I used to do bids for states or cities, and I'm like, why do I have to fill out so much stuff? But at the same time, once you are a vendor, you would probably like stumble in to some sales because the people that were in the purchasing departments were like, oh, they're already set up. I'd much rather give you this contract than have to bring on a new vendor.
And that's where it's easier to work with distributors that already have that relationship. And,
yeah, sure.
But this is a different product. It's a new product. So it does require kind of its own unique path versus a traditional reimbursement path, because the reimbursements on a typical crutch aren't great as far as insurance is concerned. And we have a whole lot of problems with our insurance industry in general. And getting into that wasn't, a fun thought for us. And it was more we wanted to solve a problem for people, and the revenue stream for that would be mostly on a cash basis. It's just like you're going to buy a new device or something for your house, a new Alexa, whatever it is. That we didn't want to go down the path of the insurance route, because that pigeonholes you into a certain price point. It pigeonholes you into a certain benefit, and that's why crutches, one of the reasons they haven't really changed, right? They can't change because they don't have anything to work with, and we just wanted to make a better product for people.
So in regards to sales and distribution, you mentioned working with different vendors or people that will sell that stuff. I mean, that's a great way to get a product in front of a heck of a lot of people, you know, because a lot of these, you're selling one product, they're oftentimes selling a catalog full.
Sure.
And with that, they've leveraged the power of volume and also have worked really hard to establish a distribution or, some kind of network.
Yep.
Is that the sales and distribution model that you guys lean on and rely on, or do you do any direct sales? I mean, and I didn't spend enough time. If you want to check out more about Max's stuff, by the way, go to mobilitydesign.com, and you can also go to the gram at MD_crutch. Now, can I buy your product on your website?
Yeah, for sure. So we do direct to consumer. That we do Amazon. We do sell from our website. We have distribution centers globally and locally, and that kind of allows us to be able to ship products at lower cost to users. But we also do work with distributors globally, because distributors have their network. They know their market. They know their insurance industry, and we don't necessarily know. We don't know the insurance industries of different countries and the purchase path for their particular users, because it's unique in every country you go to, and that's why we work with distributors, especially globally and locally. But we do both. We have minimum advertised pricing and those kinds of things that you have to implement for strategies like that. But it does help for us to be able to prove out business models and various ways that we're trying to work with the business.
So what Max just mentioned was MAP, the minimum advertised price.
Right.
I think most people don't even realize that is a thing. And that was something we had, at the music industry, because your distributors, it's the race. It can be the race to the bottom.
Yeah, it does.
In a hurry, and it's difficult to support your own price point. And things like, so 10 years ago, you talk about doing this in 2009 and prior. The world of e-commerce has changed so much since you started pioneering this product. So we look at something like Amazon. So how long have you been selling on Amazon?
Think about a year and a quarter now.
Okay, so not that long.
Right. Yep.
Okay, so 4 years ago, Prime wasn't what it is now.
Yeah, Prime changed everything. So,
yeah, it did, but I would think that this would be a hard product to sell pre-Prime. Because if you need a crutch, costs, you wouldn't. I mean, now you might be able to get it the same day.
Right. Yep.
And this is kind of a now product.
Yep.
For some of us, but at the same time, Amazon presents a separate set of challenges because you got to have inventory there.
Yep.
They do take a fair amount of your sale. I don't know what the rate is in your
It's different
category.
In every category.
Yeah. So whatever your category is, it could be different. But is that something that you found success with distribution?
Huge. Yeah. It's a big chunk of our business.
Yeah. That's 53% of e-commerce right now.
Geez, they are a behemoth. The challenge with Amazon is they're easy to work with on the front end for a user, right? It's easy to buy something on there. Super easy. That's the point. But it's very difficult to work on the back end and try to get a video on Amazon, for instance, to communicate your product. It's really hard. It's
amazing how unsophisticated their system is for a company that size on some things.
They legally don't let you do it unless you have certain criteria met and allow them to do certain things with your products. And
and that's in the medical side.
That's in our. Yeah, I don't know if that changes outside of our category. I don't know.
I think it's different in all. Selling on Amazon's different for so many different. As an author, the interface and the things like I can't put a video on my book page.
Right.
That's not a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not. I can't put a series of product images.
Right.
It's the cover, the back, and what they let you preview.
Yep.
Now that said, I have two options as an author. I can either send pre-printed books off to Amazon, and then they charge me to distribute and store them.
Sure. Yep.
Or I can go through their publication platform.
Right.
Which is what I do.
Okay. Does that make it easier for you?
Kind of. It makes it easy. It makes it easy because if you don't, a lot of people don't know this. If you send your product out to Amazon and you don't sell it fast enough, you either need to pay a lot to send it back to yourself, or they start basically penalizing you.
Yep.
And so it makes your supply chain stuff harder to deal with. Now, another thing a lot of people don't know is most of the books that you buy on Amazon, they print as they sell.
Right.
Like true print on demand.
Wow.
So it's kind of wild, but yeah, you have to use their
just in time, supply chain.
Yeah, you have to use. Well, I think at some point they start printing some in advance. I think
economies of scale.
Yeah, I think I don't know how they do it, but they're collecting a royalty on your book, and they're making money from printing. So by the end, they get most of the money.
Right.
When we sell something, and it's the same thing like with Audible.
Yep.
I get a 40% royalty
on Audible stuff.
On Audible. Yeah, despite the fact that I paid to create the Audible.
For now, until they make it even more difficult. But
well, some of the things too is like the open sourcing of things. Like you have like Spotify, Kindle Direct, the subscription.
Okay.
So you get like a half a penny a page.
Ooh, sounds like the music industry. Sounds like
my last book was about that, and it's actually all about this. It's about streaming, but the thing is you have to be out there because you're missing a significant portion. So
it does.
I mean, all that stuff does add up, and it does matter. So
we've never had the issue. I mean, we run out of inventory or get close to running out of inventory quite quickly, so we don't have issues with, I haven't had that yet, where they have to charge us.
That was actually
penalties.
My next question, and as we kind of move towards the conclusion of yet another thrilling episode of Startup Hustle, brought to you by Fullscale.io, in which we have worked through our own technical challenges today. It's kind of funny. I've always tell people that we publish the podcast, warts and all.
Yeah.
People ask me a lot. They say, how much time do you guys spend editing? I say none. We'll spend a little time on this one. We had our podcasting equipment break down not once, not twice, but actually 5 times. So, and that is our podcast version of issues in the supply chain.
Yeah.
What sort of supply chain issues have you had to overcome or learn about to make all of this smooth?
Supply chain is a challenging thing. I mean, sometimes, we developed a new type of bolt that allows you to use a coin, a euro coin, a US coin, to tighten things down, right? And that, we had challenges with MOQs on that. People need 100,000 of
with
something.
With what? MOQs?
Minimum order quantities.
Okay.
Sorry, acronym. That certain things, you're not used to. It's like all of a sudden I have to buy 100,000 of something. And if it's wrong, then you have, 99,000 wrong ones that you have to deal with and figure out what to do with.
Have you had that happen?
We have had, in the beginning we bought the wrong kind of snap buttons, and, we had thousands and thousands of these little buttons that you push. But we changed the button type to be easier for the user to use and hold more weight and things like that. And, figuring out what to do with those and recycling them in the end, which is the better way.
Yeah.
People don't want to take back their supplies once they've built them for you. But you just learn. Luckily, that was in the beginning, and we just had smaller quantities at that time. And this, the bolts, you just figure out the right vendors to work with, and it's not always easy. I've traveled all over the world working with different companies that do things for us, and in their languages. Google Translate's an amazing app.
It is, isn't it?
But sitting there and drawing for your, being able to communicate visually for people and say, this is exactly what I want, or they say, I can't make that tool, and I'm like, well, this is how I was intending to make it, and here's the idea, and then working through, because usually there's always going to be a problem. It's like never going to be, okay, great, it'll be here in 2 weeks. There's a time issue, there's a money issue, there's I can't do this issue, and then finding the right people to help you solve that problem and to solve the problems for you before they are problems is key. The right team is always key. So
where do you build all this stuff?
We do some. So some of our parts come from Germany. Some from we do some assembly here in the U.S. We do a lot of assembly over in Taiwan and India. Taiwan is kind of like high-end China, if you can think about that. Labor rates are similar to the U.S., but
have you been there?
I haven't been to Taiwan yet. I have been to India and all over Europe for various things, but the benefit is they have a huge knowledge base in manufacturing, and frankly, a lot of our knowledge base here has changed over the years because we've pushed a lot of our manufacturing over to Asia.
Yep.
And so getting people to even work with you in the beginning on a product is complicated to make as ours. Even though it's a simple product, it's a difficult tool that makes it, and a lot of people just turn you down because they don't have the expertise or they don't have the time or whatever to work.
Or they think you're not going to make enough of them.
Right. Yeah.
Which might be the more of a driving factor than
you're a startup and they run the other way.
Yeah, they can, and that's a challenge. And you mentioned things. You rattled off 5 or 6 different countries there.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that one of the biggest challenges to bringing products into the country is customs, and you don't have any control. You don't call customs and tell them to hurry up and push your parts through faster. So some of the things we'd run into, so Roland, my former employer, is a Japanese company, but they had manufacturing facilities, largely in Japan, but other places too.
Right.
Things show up at the dock in LA.
Right.
And you're just kind of sitting there.
You have to wait.
We would have to give people a window.
Right.
Someone said, well, when's my order coming in? Sometime between the 10th and the 23rd.
Right.
And they're like, what do you mean? Can't do much about it.
Right.
And sometimes it would go quickly, and then sometimes you get to the end of those time frames and you're going, what?
Yeah.
And
where is this?
Gets through when it gets through, and we've had several different people that have been in here that have made some kind of product and also talked about quality control is a real challenge.
Sure.
And whether it's a button or a change, and then sometimes if you have parts that are universal, like used through other things in life, and then maybe they change it.
Yep.
Like all of a sudden, here's a bolt, and it just threads a little different.
Right.
Or something, just something goofy. And now,
That's why you have it's called standard operating procedures, SOPs, and they're really dry to read, but they are critical for how to deal with when there's going to be changes and when there's going to be implemented parts that are from different vendors and various things like that.
And getting people to follow your SOPs is a whole other. The SOBs that don't follow the SOPs.
So you need good relationships with your vendors. Otherwise,
no doubt.
For sure.
Well, man, this is all really interesting. So if you get a chance, go to mobilitydesign.com. Go check out Instagram. Go to MD_crutch. See what they're building. It's really hard to truly paint a word picture. I could try. You have one of your products here in the studio. I mean, I can just tell by looking at it that is a significant improvement on the entire crutch.
Thanks. Yeah.
As we round out this episode of Startup Hustle, and once again, thanks for dealing with our studio challenges today.
No problem.
We figure if we give this podcast about 1.5 million repetitions, we'll eventually get it right. So I think
we'll find something new wrong.
We're in the ballpark of 200 at this point. So. I don't know what episode number this will be, but you talk about that repetition, and there's always something that can go wrong. Two questions on the way out. First, one of them will be, I like to ask at the end what kind of advice you'd have for someone that wanted to be hopeful. And then prior to that, have you finally accepted the fact that things just go wrong and that there are certain things you can't control?
So on the helpful piece, you're
going to hit the softball first, huh?
find people that do what you don't do well, and find people that you really want to work with and work around, and then keep them happy, keep them close, right? So that is a huge piece, because sometimes it's easy proximity. The person's there and they might be available, or they didn't have a job or whatever it is. But you really need to find the right people, and that's key. And we've had some great people over the years working with us, and we wouldn't be here without them. And as far as I think we have things go wrong all the time, and right now we're launching a new product, so we're in the middle of lots of things going wrong. But when it comes out, it's going to be great. The things that go wrong hopefully are smaller, and you're able to solve for them. But the main thing is just kind of keeping calm about them, because it is a relationship, right? And if something is a problem, there's usually going to be a solution or a way to solve for it, and it's time or money or whatever it is that can get you there. But the key is to having those great people around you to help solve that problem. The great relationships with the vendors, building that relationship. Like, I can't stress enough. The people you work with, go out to dinner with them. Have a drink with them, get coffee with them on a fairly regular basis. Build your relationship with them, because they're what make your life able to work and happen, right? And without that, you don't have anything, because the relationship can fall apart so fast if you're not careful. So it's something I've learned in other companies and various other experiences in life, and building that relationship is key. So
you talk about that relationship, but also building that knowledge that goes with it. And I saw a fun. I'm not a big memes guy, but I saw one that said CFO, and then it said Colin said, well, what happens if we spend all this money investing in our employees and then they leave? And then it said CEO, what happens if we don't invest in our employees and then they stay?
Yeah, huge.
And that's that whole thing. And obviously the people that are around you, I like to take the approach that they're working with me, not for me.
Yep.
And when I go to our office in the Philippines, well, last time I went, I asked everyone. We do a really fun town hall meeting, and I let them ask me whatever questions they want. They submit them, and some of them are funny. Like, one of them was, "Hey Matt, do you drink? Want to get wasted?" I answered it, but I said not often, but maybe after this week. But making yourself available and open. But I asked our whole staff. I said, "Who here works for me?" And about 2/3 of the room raised their hands. And I said, "You're all wrong. I work for you." And it's true. And if you're going to be a leader and you're going to be an innovator, or you're going to do things that matter, you can't do massive things alone.
Yep.
You need a team of people around you. And in order to do that, they want to be heard. They need to understand their level of importance in the organization and, different stuff. And then I think really in the end, people want to know that they're doing things that matter. Yeah. And that they're doing things that'll help. I don't know. I mean, and the definition of things that matter is different for all of us.
Sure.
But anyway, so once again, if you get a chance, go to mobilitydesign.com. Go to Instagram, MD_crutch. While you're there, if you want to check us out, go to @Startup Hustle Podcast. See you next time.
Thanks.